I'm really excited to learn that Messinvention India is organizing the online version of the Smart Cards Expo and IoT India Expo. So let's reconnect and re-engage in this upcoming online edition. So block your calendars and see you soon.
I'm really excited to learn that Messinvention is organizing the online version of Smart Card Expo and IoT India Expo. So block the dates for 3rd, 4th, 5th of November 2020. Thank you.
We are excited to participate at the digital version of Smart Card Expo in 2020. Online version of Smart Card Expo will have no geographical barrier to connecting with each other. Thank you.
Let us reconnect and re-engage at the upcoming online edition. So block your dates for 3rd, 4th and 5th of November 2020. Thank you.
I'm glad to invite you all at this online expo, which is starting from 3rd to 5th of November 2020. Block your dates, please be there. Let's meet, let's collaborate. Thank you.
Let us reconnect and re-engage at this online edition. So block your date for 3rd, 4th and 5th of November 2020. See you there.
We're really excited to be a part of this virtual event this time. We really hope to see you at our virtual booth at the Smart Card Expo 2020. Looking forward to see you all.
Yes, sir. Nadikan sir, it's over to you.
So very good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for your time and input. Really, we're glad to have you as on stage to have a great discussions on cyber fraud detection and preventions in offline and then online. Which create identity and then authentications, right? Always it's a great conversation in terms of always the people will focus on only on the online, but I would like to welcome the great panel as well as the great audience to have a wonderful conversation. So I would like to introduce first of all myself. I'm Navnithan. I have close to 18 years of experience into cybersecurity, where I have come across Deloitte, Capgemini, and PayU. Right now, I'm leading one of the BFS sectors, the leading industries as a CISO as well as head of IT. With this privilege as well as a pleasure, I would like to introduce the panelist, Mr. Soy. Soy is moreover seasoned risk management and compliance professional with an enviable track record of delivery based on innovation as well as strategic foresight and stakeholder management. He has close to 2 decades of experience. I think purely is into BFS sector. I think the right person to have, he would have seen both online as well as offline. Then he had multiple great certifications in terms of forensic accounting as well as complete certified governance and risk and compliance, anti-money laundering, and then overall risk management. Really, I'm glad to have you and looking forward to great discussions.
Thank you, Navneethan.
So that's great leader. Of course, he's also from the same organizations, Davish Verma. He's cybersecurity leader. He is close to 2 decades of experience. He was purely into leading technologies, strategy, consulting, as well as designing business aligned security solutions. That's what his core areas. He's particular global exposures and diverse industry experience, which includes UI, EXL, as well as the Fidelity investments. Right now, he's with Societe Generale. He's focusing purely on building security strategies, cyber maturities, and leading center of excellence. With this great pleasures, warm welcome to the sessions as well as looking forward to the wonderful discussion they wish.
Thank you, Navneethan. I look forward to the discussion.
Great. We have a great eminent panel, Geeti Panikar. She has been it's close to, I can say, is 2 decades of experience, and so widely on the BFS sectors. But her experience is purely she started with in terms of corporate banking and then risk management. Then she has moved into the completely on the the cyber side. She is senior VP and head of risk and business management, HSBC India, and she's well known for a couple of the key books, whether it is Amazon bestsellings across the global. It's on the banking articles and then in the poems, as well as you would have seen Geeti in the multiple forums as a speakers and the eminent the guest lectures, and where she's sharing her best practices and knowledge across the industry. I'm glad to have you, Geeti. Looking forward to have a fruitful discussion.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have one more panel, Dr. Edal Usakia. He's heading overall CISO security operations of Standard Chartered Bank. He's based out of Dubai. He's well known across industry. He has published many journals, as well as he has co-authored multiple books across the globe. He had won multiple awards, I can say, globally, and he is a great speaker, advisor. He's mentoring a lot of the young focus the intention people, as well as his passion is in terms purely on the lecturers, as well as writing the books on that. Welcome, Vedal. Vedal is joining in few minutes as he got stacks, and then to take it forward on that. Amazing. So with this great note, really, I'd like to have a initiate the conversation to move ahead. The topic itself sounds great and then interesting, which talks about cyber fraud as well as the digital transformations and online offline, right? The people purely on the COVID situations where we have a different kind of stuff. The people are scared to step out of the their office, as well as in terms of end-to-end transaction also it's happening on the digital, and in terms of the people movement also it's completely restricted, but of course the economy is going on the right directions. uh, Really just I'm not only going to touch before COVID and then post COVID. Really I'm going to touch the 5 to 10 years before where we are, and then the current situations where we are, right? Because if you take online offline, we have a different aspects. Of course currently also we are using a lot of offline transactions from end to end, but however would like to hear the how the transformation is going to take place from the offline to online. Are still in offline things will communicate, or still the offline stuff will exist, or the parallel growth will be there, and how this overall identifications as well as authentications play very significant role across the stuff. So really, I would like to start from the scratch, and then to get to know that what is the insights, how we have it. So I would like to start with Sai. So just give me overall what does mean the cyber fraud, because people would have heard fraud, but just would like to hear how we mention this the cyber fraud, and where it's predominantly it's happening. I mean, it's known for only offline site like ATM, or wherever we use a card, right? Only those places, or it's how it is. So maybe you can give a little bit examples on the cyber fraud, and then where it is happening. From there, we would like to initiate the conversation and then take it forward.
Navneethan, thank you so much for directing this question to me. At this day and age, I think almost all of us have some idea of what we mean by cyber fraud. So I will not bore you or the audience with the details that it is a type of crime committed by a computer with the intent to benefit from another individual's personal or financial information stored online. I think we are all clear on that. What I would like to stress on is that today cyber fraud is the most common type of fraud that has no international boundaries, and individuals and organizations need to be vigilant in order to protect their information from cyber criminals. As on date, almost all of our personal and financial information is digitally stored, and this has unfortunately instigated a steep rise in cyber crimes. Given that digitally stored data can be assessed pretty much from anywhere, committing the crime has also become impersonal and sophisticated. Given it is very difficult to also detect and track that for a common man. This is a great proposition for fraudsters, right? I mean, who thus are able to minimize the risk of detection and possible penal action. So, in the grand scheme of things, we will all note that the volume and severity of cyber fraud is much higher, and it's many times higher than what it is offline than online. Uh, we will see that there is also a hybrid variant that has remained in existence for a few years now, where there is an element of offline crime leading to an online crime or vice versa, right? For example, there is identity theft. You spoke about credit card fraud, ATM fraud, and so on and so forth. So there are many things around that. Um, to share some facts with the audience, India ranks 27th globally in the number of web threats, according to a leading service provider in the field. Whilst this may sound consoling that we are not in the top 5 or top 10, I would like to highlight the fact that the same service provider is said to have detected and blocked over 53 million threats or attempts in layman parlance. To get you to think a little more, these 53 million threats pertain to a 3-month period only. So a simple extrapolation for a year would mean over 200 million threats or attempts to defraud. That is over 400 attempts per minute. All this in India alone. So imagine what it would look like around the world. In spite of the probability of being a victim of cyber fraud, not enough people take it seriously. In fact, it is quite common to find people that use devices with poor security features, or using exceptionally common passwords, or mindlessly clicking on every hyperlink they receive in their emails, or being extremely casual in sharing their personal and financial information. So to answer the question, cyber fraud is real and it is happening right now very close to you, and the possibility of you being a victim is way higher than you can imagine. I hope that kind of gives the perspective. Navneetan, over to you.
Great, Sai. Thank you so much. Just in specific to that, just I have some lead questions like uh, how the cyber fraud landscapes, and it's specifically on the BFS sectors or the banking sectors, or it's maybe on cyber fraud can happen on any of the others, sectors also. So how do you think like this can be, defined?
See, I'm again happy that you kind of directing this one to me as well, because it's in a way continuation to what I asked, and you rightly stated that. So over the last decade or so, most of the sectors have gone through multiple changes structurally and operationally, owing to rapid technological advancements. So most services and their corresponding back-end operations have now become digital. Along with this digital transformation also rises the challenge of information technology security. The varied types of cybercrime, such as phishing, stalking, spamming, spoofing, hacking, ransomware attacks, and other physical and digital attacks, require organizations to secure their networks and servers. Whilst we may all agree that the banking and financial services may be the most vulnerable or impacted sector when it comes to cyber fraud, it also highlights one of the foundational characteristics of cyber fraud, and that is that it is almost always done for financial gains. We have a very intricate situation with the landscape of cyber fraud in some of the key sectors. Though it thematically remains the same across sectors, the impact varies from one sector to another. And to complicate things further, the impact may vary, but the potential failure points or the control environment largely remains the same. Also, we live in a time where the boundaries between sectors are sometimes diminished. Say, for example, there is a chain reaction sort of impact across sectors that the market experiences in the event of some developments, adverse or otherwise. The financial sector has become the main target for cyber frauds because funds are now digitally stored and transferred. Without sound security measures in place, any organization's sensitive data could be at risk, and it doesn't matter which sector they are in. Experts continue to point out that the global pandemic crisis is going to compound the risks of cyber fraud due to the sudden spurt of online transactions. Or for that matter, any form of online activity. Even the new digital workforce has pushed most organizations to significantly contribute to the online footprint by using multiple applications that have led to privacy issues and phishing attempts, including ransomware attacks. Fraud and crime adapt to developments in the domain they plunder. With the advent of digitization and automation of financial systems, these crimes have become more electronically sophisticated and impersonal. However, when you look at it, it is ultimately the organization and its clientele that is exposed to this risk, irrespective of sectoral differences. Over to you, Navneet.
Amazing, Sai. It's you well articulated, right? That's no boundary for this overall e-commerce as well as it's a banking. Now, if you see the earliest stages, the banking, it's like within, the four wall, and then there are, a couple of data centers behind this. That's what it is, a banking. But now the banking is absolutely different. There's no boundary wherever you want to do the transactions, you can get it, and predominantly on the BFS sectors. It does not mean the cyber fraud, which will happen only on the BFS sector or the banking sector. It may happen on most of the other area also. But ultimately, all the money is on the wire, right? All the money is on the zeros and ones. So absolutely, the target is it's on the the financial aspects where they have a predominantly they have a major attacks. And then as well as rightly you articulated, it's not only on the phishing, not only on the wishing. So really, it's beyond that. There are many other attacks which may directly or indirectly lead to the cyber fraud. Thank you so much, Sai. So on this, setting up the context and then to move ahead actually. And really, just I want to touch upon, because Devesh is a little bit on the technical side. Just really, I wanted to hear Devesh inputs. How importance, because if you see this current the overall transactions, it's purely based on your identity, right? Earlier, if you see the banking, where physically the people will be presented, where the people will verify, even though physically you are presented, the people will ask for, give me your ID card, because we want to do the validations whether you are the right person to do the banking. But now the things are absolutely different, right? So we are looking for remote identifications as well as authentications. Then we are allowing the further transaction. So how do you feel, or what is your thought process, Devish, like in the back end? How secure, how importance to secure overall identity and then authentications? It's maybe online and then offline. I would like to hear your input on those aspects to move ahead.
Sure, Navneet. So, Nathan, you rightly mentioned that identity becomes the key when it comes to online transaction. In offline, there were different ways earlier. You need to prove yourself with certain sort of documentation in the bank. But now, as we are cruising through this digital transformation, many banks we are coming up right now without any branches. They are totally branchless banks. Within SG also, we have a specific business entity where entire business is online banking. Now, those kind of situation, identity becomes very, very key for us. Just not little well today, but sorry for that disturbance. Yeah, so identity becomes the key. As Sai also mentioned, wherever there is money, there are possibilities of fraud, and it starts with how you prove yourself as that person. In the banking sector, financial sector, for that matter, other sectors like online gaming and other online transactions, there are attempts, there are ways where digital identities have been compromised, they have been misused. One classical example that we see nowadays are identity bots. Now, if I am, let's say, playing on a mobile app, a game, maybe on a Dream 11 or MPL or somewhere, and now I am being paid for those games. If I win, if I get some scores, I get money. So even my gaming is linked to financial benefits. Now, hackers, they are taking a step forward. They are introducing identity bots, where a bot will be playing there. It will be manipulating the things and then drawing money at the end. With the same thing, if I start linking to the financial sector, if I am a user and if my identity is stolen, maybe through a bot or by an hacker, it becomes very, very easy for a criminal to do criminal activities such as money laundering and other transactions which are absolutely barred, and even the legal regulatory frameworks, be it European, American, there are laws against money laundering. If my identity is stolen, I won't even realize that somebody else is transacting on my behalf, is doing criminal activities on my behalf. And one day when I will receive a legal notice, from an authority or a body, at that time I'll get to know. So you can understand, with the things getting online, things getting digital, identity becomes the key. And that's where, the frauds are also getting into. This reminds an interesting incident to me, on the identity side. As deep fake and augmented reality is increasing every day. Of course, the intent is to have better user experience, but it is being misused by criminals also. So in 2019, a CEO of a manufacturing energy company in that sector, his voice was mimicked, his identity was stolen, and hackers gave instruction to finance team to transfer approximately $245,000 just because of one particular thing, which is identity, which is digital right now. So of course, crimes are on rise. Hackers are taking a step forward. They are utilizing the same technology that are being designed for our benefit and comfort. They are misusing it, and identity is the focal point for all these crimes. When it comes to offline modes, Navneetan, this is not new, and Sai can definitely add to it from his past experience on banking side. Getting fake identity proofs and getting your accounts, getting your details was not a big thing in past, and there were many instances where people committed crimes. Now, with the combination of digital and these offline mode, sometimes people find it little comfortable to prove their identity. Most of your digital information is available on web, and with a combination of certain documentation, they can have a little stronger profile and they can do larger crimes. That's what is being seen in the industry at ground level nowadays.
Great, Devesh. But just overall on the percentages wise, where you feel, in terms of the fraud wise, whether it is online has increased or the offline has really it has increased. Because as you rightly mentioned, right, in terms of offline, where we used to have a fake document, but now if you take that, most of the things, where we have a deep fake and all the things and all, right, how we had the fraud at offline, the equally it has in online also. You see the any percentage of stuff, whether it is online is really increased, or online have a lot of mechanisms to prevent or to overcome such a fraud, like it does a multiple the validations before any fraud occur. What do you see, like which will have a upper hand in terms of the fraud they wish?
Yeah, so Navneetan, let's look at the history of this evolution. If we take a simple example of a banking website, maybe 15 years ago when banking websites were launched, they had very, very limited features. if I had an account with ICICI Bank 15 years ago, and I remember, there was no two-factor authentication. I was simply given an ID and a password, and inside that website also there were very limited features to do. Now, maybe 10 years ago, they introduced other elements of multi-factor authentication and many other features. Now in 2020, when we talk about features, it is not just mobile app or a website. They are into variables, they are into PWA, your progressive web apps, they're everywhere. And the kind of features and API are being exposed nowadays, the attack surface has drastically increased. Even your limits, now we talk about UPI being integrated, IMPS and these features where fund transfer is instant. If I create a fake identity, within few hours, if I can make instant transactions, and then I can disable my ID. So for a criminal, my job is done. And these kind of instances, these kind of abundance of features are leading to multifold rise in online crime. Offline still, they follow standard methods of proving your identity, taking references. But with online, it has become very, very easy nowadays. Now, in this situation, when I have a lot to do on the website, my identity cannot be challenged immediately. It is leading to a lot of losses nowadays. I was referring to a report some time back where one small bank itself, they just launched their online features. They witnessed a loss of 155.7 crores in India just because of the increasing online crimes. So definitely online is making its mark, and online is more prone to these kind of issues as well because of the nature of the business.
Amazing, Devesh. That's a two-way, right? One is organization countries using to have a more user experience, as well as where they want to get into the more digital transformation. But at the same time, the hacker also use predominantly to have all the fraud, by these respective technologies. That's great, insight in terms of with examples, right? Of what's happening on across globe, not only on the e-commerce sites, most of the places. That's really amazing. Thank you so much, Devesh, setting up a stage and then to move forward actually. And really, just I would like to hear from Geeti, where she is moreover started the career into moving to the risk management, then finally got into the cyber risk management, which has a lot of the insight, right? So really, just I wanted to know whether it is a technology alone can help to avoid this overall fraud, or we need additionally some other factors also. What do you think, Geeti? Just I would like to hear every input, because just Devish has touched upon really technology is helping a lot for the fraudsters to do the fraudulent activity. But what do you think actually from your side to avoid this fraud? What are the things which needs to be taken care? Technology alone will help, or maybe additional other factors which needs to be considered.
So thank you, Navneetan, for the question. I completely agree with your thought that technology alone may not be successful in when it comes to cyber defense. The best offense is having knowledgeable people and who are very well aware about potential threats as well as responsibility around cyber hygiene. Uh, so, yeah, like Sai sir and Devesh has already outlined how digitalization has increased over time, especially post the pandemic started. Digital usage has exponentially increased in all the sectors, not just in financial sector. However, if you really notice, has cybersecurity also or cybersecurity awareness also has it increased? No. People were forced to adapt to this new environment so quickly. Companies were forced to adapt to work from home. Many companies were not used to that kind of environment, and many of them had to use even BYOD in a very quick timeline. So when we look at in that context, cyber literacy or digital literacy also needs to catch up with this increased adoption in all sectors, particularly banking and financial, because the financial angle is also there. But sadly, people in general, and this includes all of us, not only in the banking space or even outside, we are very concerned about physical security. When it comes to our homes, we don't forget to lock our doors or lock our windows, buy the best locks or technology, monitoring cameras, even take insurance for theft. But how many of us have like a cyber insurance, personal cyber insurance? Or how many of us make it a practice that we have to change our passwords or make it update our systems, so be it BYOD or official systems, which are taken care by the company, but and we easily give away our passwords or easily give away our identity documents. If somebody asks for, like, I need your Aadhaar or some other social security number for some purpose, we easily give out, and it is easy to replicate. So that level of awareness about asking for the purpose and giving it only to need to know and on in an encrypted manner is very much required to survive in the future situation. And hence I feel cyber security awareness needs to start from schools, because that is where children are getting into this space of internet usage. So when we teach computer or when we teach internet, we also need to teach them about cyber security threats and how can they protect. Similarly, older generation, if you look at them, they are also now coming into the cyberspace at a more frequency. They use for video conferencing with the families, friends. Skype and other Zoom have become a day-to-day, word in our life. So are they really protecting themselves, as elders may not have that much of knowledge? So and similarly, our youngsters may be downloading all the apps that they like from the internet. So those, if you are aware, then you will be able to prevent those kind of uh, inadvertent errors from our side and exposing ourselves to the security threats that are emerging. And to that friend, there are a lot of good initiatives. One of the initiative I wanted to touch upon is, like, recently something which really excited me was the phone pay campaign on UPI. So in October, they came out with a campaign called Dasara campaign, which is connecting the theme of Dasara with 9 potential cyber threats. And they have come up with OTP Assur, KYC Assur. How do you really counter that? So common people can relate to such difficult technical aspects through some storytelling, as well as sharing scenarios of personal storytelling by experienced people. And as a community, all the cyber experts, as well as the banking and other fraternity, needs to invest in continuous security. Similarly, the government is also coming up with a national cyber security strategy, in which cyber insurance as well as cyber education are going to be key pillars. So I believe that more awareness can certainly prevent more attacks. And in fact, 80% of the attacks can be prevented, or they are caused by the ignorance of people or lack of or poor hygiene, cyber hygiene from the individuals.
Amazing, Geeti. It's very valid input. I like this. Very important point is you raised it, just to be able to start the awareness from the school, right? That's very important. It's already most of the countries they are doing across the world. How we get to know that politics and then as well as the law, which is mandatory. Similarly, on cybersecurity also, which are things maybe as end users, right? On the do's and don'ts, they have to know, as well as if any breach or something, they should be knowing to whom they have to notify, right? That's a basic hygiene. As rightly mentioned, it's very much required and mandatory. I think it's good to have from the school, right? Maybe after certain standards, it helps a lot, so that it will become a habit. By default, they knows it, right? How they wake up and do the brushing the same way. It's become as the habit, and then to take it forward. That's amazing. Really, we have to start thinking towards making awareness across this organization, as well as across the overall. I can say it's a school level. That's amazing at the awareness level. Thank you so much. Really, just since just we are talking on the people perspective, but similarly, just I want to touch on the technology standpoint. What are the technology which really needs to be enforced? To detect this cyber fraud. Maybe I can land up on Devish to hear this input actually, because as rightly Keerthi is mentioned, one side is awareness, because now if you want to do the transaction as a one side, really it's multiple people involved. One is maybe the organization, second one is in the banking, and the centralized body, and the third one is as a end user. End user standpoint, really they have to take care of the stuff. But from technology standpoint, right, from we can't always depend on the end users. Really, we want to understand technology side. What are the things needs to be enforced to detect as well as to prevent fraud. Devish, over to you.
Sure, Navneethan. So, Navneethan, I would like to start with where Githi left on the people side and the awareness side. One of the important detective control that side is the user himself or herself. If some sort of fraud activity has happened with me, I will be getting to know about it maybe through a SMS notification or something like that. And that time, especially if you look at people who are aged or retired, people who are not so much tech savvy, they don't even understand the basic, mechanisms which bank and government has established. Now, if I became part of any fraud, and I don't know where to report that, can I go back to my bank directly and ask them, please act on it, and what are some of the defined processes I have to follow? That itself, is part of customer awareness, which the onus of most of it is lying on the bank itself. Other aspect of it, there are cyber cells where a user is supposed to report the incidents. Now, there are two ways. As part of detective control, I may give this entire task to the user himself, and based on their type of incident they are part of, they go to cyber cell and break their head there because they may not understand a lot of cyber terms. Other way is, some sort of consortium can be formed where banks, with similar interest, they form a group, and they start channelizing all those issues through that consortium, through that syndicate. So those are some of the areas, which can complement customer awareness, which can give them additional channels to put their issues forward and building a strong defense against it. Because if I am approaching as a bank to a government body, I will have some sort of communication channels with them, some sort of expedited methods with them. In nutshell, I'll make sure that my issues are addressed well in time before that perpetrator transfer that money somewhere else or further takes it to a different account where it becomes practically impossible to get that money. I should be able to act on that. That can be one way which can add up to user awareness. Second part, completely on the technology side, if you see, we have been talking about criminals interest on financial stuff. Let me take an example. If, let's say, as a banking sector or as a financial sector, one company is offering trading services, and if I start opening accounts with fake identities, maybe through bots, identity bots, and I start manipulating the market. Now, this can lead to such a big risk, to many organizations and to the platform, provider itself. If a company is offering a trading platform, and people are manipulating there with fake IDs, that that becomes a major problem for them. Now, how do we detect these kind of threats? If you can correlate to some of the credit agencies like Equifax, as an example, they were mostly into making your credit history. If a user is following a channel of digital identity, opening up an account, then if those identities can be proved by renowned companies who can look at your credit rating, that is one important control. Again, this has to be completely online, digital, through the use of APIs and secure connections between the two parties. So as soon as somebody is trying to open an account and trying to do some transactions, it can be very well validated by a third party. That's one way of looking at the detective controls, that you found it at the right place. Second thing, if you see, for example,
Amazing,
issue related to
Devesh.
your.
It's
Sorry, Navneet. You're saying something, Navneet? I missed it.
yeah, Devesh, go ahead.
Okay. Second point, if you see in the
Yeah, just
detection
go ahead. Go
side,
ahead.
yeah, let's talk about one step forward, identity. Now, identity, of course, I may get an identity, but if it is stolen by an hacker in between, and those people are further doing some criminal activities, second thing which banks tried was second factor authentication. Now, 2FA itself, uh, first of all, it is not a global phenomena that we use one channel across the globe. In India, for example, the concept of OTP works very well because we assume everybody has cell phone and they will be receiving an SMS. Vis-a-vis, if the same detective control you try to put it maybe in US or somewhere else, you cannot assume, a bank cannot assume that the person will have a mobile phone to receive an SMS. Even implementing these kind of two-factor controls, can be a little challenging. Maybe we'll talk about it later in the session today. But putting 2MFA, two-factor authentication, is another control to prevent and check these incidents. Third thing, which is again getting a lot of traction nowadays, is use of AI/ML. As a bank, you get third party tools and technologies which work on users behavior and their patterns. It can be as simple as, how do I type my passwords on the keys, what is the speed, what is the movement of my fingers. Now with those things, an engine in the backend can detect whether it is Devesh as the right person, or it is somebody else who is trying to do it on his behalf. So there are technologies available which are using all next gen disruptive technologies to build secure cyber solutions. Over to you, Navneet.
I think when I joined, and I disappeared. By the way, apologies from all of you. I was stuck in a meeting and I'm a bit late. Apologies from my panelists, co-panel speakers, and from everybody who's watching. But here I am.
Welcome to the panel.
Thank you, Iti. Thank you.
No problem, Madel. Just I think Navneet lost some connection. I'll just give a quick summary of where we have reached so far, and maybe you can catch up from here. So Sai started with overall trends in industry which are revolving around increase in cyber frauds and crimes, especially in BFSI and other online industries. So with increase in digital transformation, the crimes are also increasing, and he gave his examples from his experience of banking sector altogether. Then we spoke about what can lead to these kind of cybercrime when identities are concerned. So if I have a digital identity, somebody can misuse it and do some cyber crimes. So that's where we started the discussion. And then Geethi added to it, of course, one of the most important point was awareness, user awareness angle. So although we are getting digital, but awareness is something, it has to start from scratch, from school itself, where we put this in the foundation. And that's when we move to the technical aspects of putting the controls of detection and prevention in identity frauds. That's where I ended my part. So that's what we have covered so far. We'll wait for Navneetan to join and start. He's the key person today.
We feel the time anyway.
Maybe you can, if you want to contribute something in the meantime, Ardal.
Sure. I mean, you highlighted everything. First of all, for the ones they don't know me, I work as the Regional Chief Information Security Officer at Standard Chartered Bank, responsible of Middle East, North Africa, and Pakistan. Like everybody else in banking sector, busy with regulations, with securing the bank, with fraud. And here today, I'm with my co-panelists to share our knowledge, to add some value, hopefully, to everybody who's listening to us. And maybe until Navneet come, we can ask ourselves questions, what you recommend to fill for the time, unless we have anything else to cover. Darish?
Adal, if I may suggest, just to kind of keep the tempo going until we have
That's what I
Navneet
mean.
back. If I could
Uh,
actually kind of suggest that we talk a bit about alignment within an organization between the cybersecurity teams, products, and business lines
Great question.
on prevention and detection.
If you want, as a late joiner, let me take this question. I mean, if they ask me what is the role of Chief Information Security Officer, I would definitely count this in top 3. CISO should not just understand cybersecurity, fraud protection, prevention, but also understand the business. Understanding the business and aligning with every stakeholder. What does this mean? Let's say we have our security company, physical security company, who has really nothing directly to do maybe with cybersecurity, or let's think about the supply chain management team, or let's think about the non-IT related teams. It's my job as CISO to somehow get the approval from the board to create a culture where somehow everybody is involved in cybersecurity. We always say the CEO is responsible for cybersecurity. Why? Because if an cyber attack happens, most probably the CEO has to be in front of the media and explain why it happened. Secondly, the CISO is going to be in front of the media with the media team explaining what's happening, how it happened, what should happen. So it's our job to create a culture to reach everybody in the organization to create cybersecurity awareness. And with this in mind, we should be in correlation with other teams, because when we look at today cyber attacks, most of the attacks still start with phishing, still start with configuration, still start with way that unfortunately we cannot just prevent via investing in technology. We have to invest in human and human behavior as well. Yes, there is great tools from many other companies I don't want to talk about. There are lots of great vendors. They support the tools, but if I don't tell Giti, for example, why not to click, if I don't give the awareness to Sai or to Divish himself, why he or she should respond every single incident, might be false positive, then I'm not doing my job right. Maybe my panelists friends will add something. If not, I would say, look, hacker has to be hacker. Me as a defender, I am responsible, as I said, there's so many countries, so many computers, so many virtual environment, mobile phones, you name it. The hacker has to find just one way, one vulnerability, and be successful in one attack path to bring me down. This could be a ransomware. Just happened to global companies. They paid millions of dollars. Me, as a defender, in the other hand, if I can detect one part of the attack, one small tiny part of the attack, this could be a phishing email which went to Giti and to Shai and to Navneet Han at the same time. If Navneet Han responds to me early enough, maybe at the same time Giti and Shai clicked on this email, but if Navneet Han gives me early enough heads up, I can use my tools and block the attack before it's been too late. As you asked, this is really important to be in touch with other teams and reflect regardless of being a cybersecurity or not. Now, Nitan, sorry, did you disappear because I joined? If you want, you are more important. I go, you come back. Just joking. I hope this answered the question, by the way.
Yeah, thanks, Atal.
I was trying to close the gap, by the way. I'm not handsome as you, but thank
thanks,
you.
Atal. Thank you so
Shai
much.
And Devish, they helped me.
For the input and the insight. It's always wherever your presence is, it's a value addition. That's no second.
All right, if you want, we just fill the time until you're back. You are back, welcome back. So we leave the conversation to be directed by you again. Unless Giti and Devish or Shah wants to add something on what I said. I feel like being the moderator now.
Yeah,
Not just
I would
late,
like to just add something on
please.
the people part since I touched upon it earlier. So, like whatever systems that we build, when we monitor phishing attacks or other things, we also monitor what is the post awareness impact and how the click rate has gone down. And if it is really going down in organization, that means we have succeeded in creating a more aware and more responsible risk culture in the organization. And that alignment, it's not just CISO's role or the head of IT security's role or even the CEO's role to get that right risk culture in the organization. It is everybody's job, and cybersecurity is no longer going to be a siloed job. What I personally like when I started getting into more reading and learning more into engaging into cybersecurity, one of the motivation is that I realize that as an enterprise risk professional, cybersecurity is going to be my core responsibility going forward. Although there may be separate additional individuals who are exclusively into cyber. And this is something all the professionals in the organization need to realize that it's everybody's job.
Amazing.
Well said. I cannot agree more.
Amazing. Thanks, Settle. And then Kirti, sir, great input as well as taking the ownerships to proceed on the flow. That's amazing. And really, just I want to touch upon the few more steps very interestingly. Now, if you see this a credit card or the debit card, what are the card? What we have it earlier, we have the magnetic tape, and then after that we got into the EMV chip, right? And third, now we got into the NFC. So now we have a three different variety of stuff, but the NFC will have a lot of security challenges also, right? In terms of, if you're carrying your card on your wallet, it's easy to swipe the amount. Of course, the limitation is a 2K, but I can have a multiple 2Ks, right? That also amount, which is connected to the respective, the account holders. So really, just I wanted to know and hear input from Devesh. How the security product and security, the product as well as the security, how we are going to balance it, right? Because we should not focus only the user convenience. Really, we have to focus on the security features also. So, love to hear your input, Devesh, like how we want to balance, the product features and security.
Definitely, Navneet. So, Navneet, in my views, whenever we are trying to move to a newer methods of digital and internet era, we are going to introduce new features. Of course, they will add to the convenience. Personally, to me, it is very convenient. I'll take an example. Nowadays, in this COVID situation, I generally avoid handing over my card to any person at point of sale, and I just want to tap my card. Now, if I'm buying a grocery and if my amount is less than 2,000 rupees in INR, it is very easy for me to just ask him, can I tap my card, so that it is totally contactless. When I go to a petrol bunk or a gas station, I look for the petrol quantity which is less than 2,000 rupees, so that I don't even have to hand over my card to that person. Now, it is convenience. Of course, it is adding to my safety as well in the COVID situation, in the pandemic situation. But on the other hand, you rightly mentioned that same card can be the same feature can be used for fraud by doing multiple debits of 2,000 INR. Now, when we look at these kind of controls, of course, as you see, one control, one preventive control is put as a part of the design itself. For example, they limit the transaction amount to 2,000. Now, when this application is being designed, now there comes the most important part. Ultimately, it is technology. It is an application in the back end who is doing all these management. Now, in my application, if a hacker can bypass this control, I am using a different kind of machine where it can increase my limit, and there is no proper authentication available on the application side. I can easily manipulate that amount. This happened to a lot of frauds on the e-commerce as well, if I take an example. So, and I'm sure Namrita, being part of PayU earlier, you can correlate to it. When a transaction is getting for authentication to a gateway, at that time criminals used to manipulate that amount. And in place of, authenticating for, let's say, 10 rupees or 10 INR, they used to do it for 10,000. It means there are some issue in my backend of the application. When it was designed and when it was created, the programming was not done properly. Now, to ensure these kind of controls, to ensure that application is secure, most important part is building on the strong detection capabilities, the detection strategies. Most of the banking sector, they are maturing very well on the application security side. What a clear transformation which I can see nowadays is, the transactions, or sorry, the testing which used to be isolated or not that frequent, they are being governed by regulatory and compliance requirement, that every application which is doing financial transaction has to be pen tested by a certified third party person, and that person will look at all these logics and flaws that a hacker can manipulate or hacker can misuse. Another example, we are in the world of digital transformation, and the new thing which is up our sleeves are agile models. So as and when a new functionality is added into the mainstream application, it becomes responsibility of product owner to make sure that it is thoroughly tested, both at the code level, source code level, as well as at the external pen testing level, so that the clean code is passed to production, and we do not become vulnerable to cyber frauds. So these are some of the areas, Navneet, where technology is catching up with
Yeah,
the
Devesh.
features.
See, do you think, like, in terms of security by design is enforced, as a culturally? Because really, just I wanted to hear, the input on, because most of the application, no, if you see it's maybe the Facebook, or it's maybe Twitter, or the Microsoft. What are the breach which has happened close to in terms of millions of accounts, which has happened across industry? Just I named out all the big shots. Really, just I want to understand whether it is happening at security by designs or privacy by designs on the early stage itself, right? So really, just I'm coming to Erdal to get to know, like, what are the technology or process needs to be the enforced. It's maybe to detect the fraud or maybe to prevent the fraud. Because as rightly Devesh is mentioned, it's a two-way, right? One is security by design, privacy by design on the early stage. So, as an engineering guys, as well as a product guy, as well as security guy, all three together sitting and designing as a product, it goes as a flawless, right? But sometime, like, there are many chances, everybody's human, but however, when you come to the all the systems designs, there are flaw, there are possible. So really, just I wanted to hear the input, how, what are the process or technology where we can put together to detect or the prevent the fraud, Edal. Over to you.
All right, perfect example you have given. Security should be built in from the beginning. When you say early stages, way before we even start to design, I need this application, you have to have security in mind. Now, instead of me giving hypothesis example, I want to go back to 2015, which most of you will remember, Carbanak, a malware which hit 100 banks and more than 1 billion, I repeat, 1 billion, not rupee, not Turkish lira, not Australian dollars, US dollars were stolen. And physically. So this is more than 1 ton money. How? The hackers reach out as usual via some vulnerabilities, but they were patient. Once they reached the bank, they didn't do anything. They watched how the fraud detection system works, how the money transfer is working, when the money is being loaded to ATMs, what kinds of fraud protection limits the bank has. They watched the bank for up between 4 to 6 months, and then they started to manipulate money from let's say, Turkey to India, India to Japan, Japan to US, US to wherever the money was stolen, which was made hard to track. What happens these days? I think Devish said it again. There is so many different fraud ways, which I'm not going to talk here, but the ones in the news, for example, where people, hackers, threat actors, they use smaller amounts to bypass the security amount. It's like what we call in cybersecurity fragmentation attack. what it is basically, instead of sending the virus on one gun, which we see in the movies, for example, let's assume this is the gun. We cannot take it as one piece inside the bank because there is a physical security. But what if you take it piece by piece, and assemble it inside? So the fraud detection team should be really careful. But fraud detection by itself is not good. As you said, you need a good cybersecurity partner. This could be Microsoft, this could be Komodo, this could be whatever you're using, with all my respect, but this is also not enough. You should have a threat intel team who's always looking out to the world. What's happening? Feed you. I always keep saying that. I mean, these days I attend many webinars. For the ones they repeated watching, it's like repeating myself, but I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. Look, Shai or Giti, do you like your next door neighbor? Or do you know your next door neighbor? I'm asking a question. Yes?
As much, yep.
What about the one next? Probably not, right?
No, not
but
as much.
Maybe if that person is your favorite person, maybe not. Regardless, if you love this person or not, if there is a fire, you better go and help this person, because the fire will might jump to your house and it will be too late. I'm not saying this, hey, go help be fireman, but what I'm saying is we have to build a proper cybersecurity strategy which has an eye. As I said 3 minutes ago while Navneet was away, it's our job to build a cybersecurity culture which touches from A to Z everybody in the organization, including customers. Because sometimes they cannot hack me, they will hack the customer. When a customer is doing a transaction, they might come inside my organization, or maybe this is a wealthy customer, which is going to affect me regardless. So back to this. So I have a, I call this like this. Having a proper threat intel team will make you powerful. Having right technology will empower you. Knowing your vulnerabilities will improve your defense. Combining all this will master your cybersecurity strategy. If you understand the business, if you know the threats, if you know your technology, then you are good. Here's another example from real life. Shai, I want to give you a Ferrari, but the condition is you're going to drive the Ferrari in the desert. Will you be happy?
Not as
Let's
much.
assume you have a desert. No, a Ferrari in a desert is not the right car. For that, you would prefer probably an old Nissan Petrol, which will take you definitely better than a Ferrari. But if I tell you this, or let's say, in India, it rains during rain season, right? If I try to sell you water, will you buy the water? Because, hey, you have enough water. Why should you buy that water, even if it's for cheap? But if I press a button and take you straight to mid of Sahara, the desert, you are about to die from thirstiness, and I try to sell the water, you will definitely buy it. So sometimes it's not like, for example, when people look at my background, they might see the world, but when I look at the same background, I see securing the world. It's the same image, but it can give us different things. Like, for example, Giti is my sister, okay? And Navneet, we met in the airport, we're walking out. When I see Giti, I get happy as a brother because I saw my best friend or my sister. And Navneet, who's next to me, he saw Giti, says, oh, what a beautiful woman. He gets happy as well to see a beautiful person. But same image, two different messages has been taken. As long as we can combine the messages in terms of cybersecurity, minimize the possible threat, know how by threat intelligence, as I said, use the right tools with the right techniques and set up our tooling right is also important. Then I think we will be more successful when it comes to prevention. I hope this answered the question. I know it was a bit long, but I wanted to cover it from multiple aspects.
No, amazing, Idal. Thank you so much for taking us into overall Middle East with all the examples. Really, we felt we are in the the places wherever you have mentioned. The very important highlight point is, really just it's reminded so many incident. The people don't take as a gun, right? People really they take it as a small bit and pieces of information, and then inside the organization they do the assembling and then they launch the stuff. That is a very core, the important information. So really just you have paused it, really we have to focus always all the time. It won't launch as a simple attack. It's a bit and pieces. It will get assembled some other later time and then it will launch over there. That's a really the great examples you have taken. And the next very important factor is you have highlighted is threat intelligence. It's like we cannot just ignore it if it is happening on maybe season time. Only season time we have to monitor. It may not be the case. It should be a continuous, consistent monitoring on threat side, so that it will be the risk protections will be taken care. That's a well the great example you have given, and really it adds for me also. I have taken as just input and to ahead. That's amazing. Since you covered on technology side, really just I wanted to hear from Geeti's side, because Geeti is always expertise on the people aspects as well as embedding cyber security as a culture, is a part of the DNA and all things and all. Really just I wanted to hear because out of one third they got into the cyber fraud, but just I wanted to hear what's the age range of populations they are getting into such kind of attack, such kind of fraud, so that we can categorize some extent, right? It's maybe the early stage they couldn't adopt, or maybe the very elder stage they couldn't adopt, or maybe the younger stage they couldn't understand what's the things it's happening over there. So I would like to hear on the cyber fraud side, on the e-commerce or the banking, or maybe any of the health sectors, or maybe in the product sector, love to hear what's the age range of people they're getting into such a cyber threat, and why this was happening, how we can prevent. Over to you, Giti.
Yeah. So from a age profiling, which hackers or attackers would definitely do, traditionally the perception is that the older people are more vulnerable, which is true to a certain extent, because they are not the digital natives. So they are late adopters, and they are new to many of the technology. They may not even know how to use all the features of an app, or what are the kind of consents that they are providing, and about the cyber hygiene they may not be very familiar. I'll tell one personal experience itself, like how we can prevent such circumstances. When my mother started, in fact, she is an early adopter to computer compared to me, and she started learning, and then she ventured into internet and mobile and all forms of gadgets. And when we started internet banking long back, since I am a banking professional, I told her all the possible scenarios of KYC fraud, OTP fraud, and all of those techniques. And then whenever, so that has really helped me personally to ward off attacks which are targeted to her. She's a senior citizen. And she also educates her friends so that such attacks can be avoided by other people. And wherever she finds any suspicious messages or suspicious call, she has a first defense. But even after that, if it feels really authentic, she will call me and check, is this really authentic? Can I click that? So that's the level of education I have started with my home. And I believe that if all of us start it within our home, create an educated citizen group across India for the elderly, it is very, very important for them to really handhold them about the usage and potential threats. But surprisingly, while these are not digital native, our digital savvy millennials and even post millennials, they are equally vulnerable when it comes, and that's quite surprising, because they are very familiar. So we think that they are very savvy, they will protect themselves. But they have a culture of downloading whatever apps, which is really attractive from any sites, insecure sites. When it's in a workplace, if they're not allowed to use certain applications, they will find workarounds. So whether within external or internal application, there is a tendency to find what is that workaround which I can use. Similarly, they don't have the cyber discipline of patching or putting the latest virus, or they may give reuse password. The reuse age has been found as very high among millennials. They invite social media channel, and many of the stranger invites are accepted because they want to become an influencer. In that quest to become an influencer, they increase the number of friends that they have, and they may be strangers totally. So which eventually leads to cyberbullying and cyber fraud related threats. So these are two extreme ends, I would say, the elderly as well as the younger generation, who are now using many of these payment apps for day-to-day transaction. These are two segments where we need to enhance our educational efforts. Similarly, that is where I said that starting from the class or starting from the school is very, very important. And similarly, for the elderly, we need a little more targeted kind of education and hand holding. And this responsibility is not with the financial situation, financial institution alone, because now the adoption in a school, digital schooling, or digital education, digital hospitalization, digital government officials, all of government organization, everything has become online. So this responsibility is with the government, the health sector, all other sector. And Edel rightly touched upon that, I have to be secure, and my neighbor also has to be secure to for us to be collectively secure. And hence, I believe that national strategy, or this national or globally, we need to work together between organization, and because endpoints and surface area for attack is drastically increasing. Everything you see will become an endpoint once we are adopting IoT and once we have 5G. So everything can become an endpoint. In that circumstances, protecting my own perimeter or my own third party's perimeter will not be sufficient. It will be a perimeter. I would say I would look at globe as an overall perimeter, and collective collaboration will be only solution for resilience. And these two particular age groups are our primary vulnerable targets that we need to protect them.
Amazing, Giti. Moreover, just I can take as an input as we need a more awareness at younger level as well as the elder level. Elder level, they are a little bit in terms of speedy, agile, all these steps, but in terms of a little bit younger level, they have a different aspect. But ultimately, both the side where we need a lot of awareness, what they have to do, what they should not do as end user, as well as at the operating level. Thank you so much. Really, I think where we need more Giti, to teach each and every mother to create a more awareness, across the world. Because always right, that's what they teach it, right? If you have a one woman, she will light this entire family. That statement, it's reminding me really that need a lot of awareness from end to end. If you take care of your house, then the entire street will be taken care. If you take care of entire street, the entire city will be taken care. Similarly, entire city is taken care, then the entire country is taken care. That's a way I feel from your input. That's really amazing. So moreover, we have seen from the people standpoint, process standpoint, and then technology standpoint, and as well as the governance, how we want to have a complete protection. But really, just I want here input from Devish, how you are going to apply this complete, cyber fraud, like a 360-degree protection from people, process, technology, and against the recent innovations. As you rightly pointed out, the recent innovation, it goes down the line, it may not require any card. I'm damn sure down the line we may not have a credit card or debit card, because all the things is on the mobile, right? The people not comfortable. In fact, myself, right? I'm not comfortable in carrying my mobile as well as credit card or a debit card. I'm allowed to carry only mobile because it has a multi stuff, right? Earlier we used mobile only to talk, to receive a call, send a call, to text, SMS. That's it. Now this complete transformation is changed. That is at least one of the features in mobile. On top of that, we do a lot of stuff actually. So similar way, if you see this, the technology is really it's going ahead, and then whether it's really the people, process, technology, governance, it's enough to protect the cyber fraud, or we are in the right phase, or still something which needs to be taken care. Devish, over to you. Love to hear your input on innovation as well as what are the things existing over there.
Definitely, now, Nathan. So I will try to stitch it together. Before I start, I just like to mention from the regulatory and compliance side, it will be great if Sai can add to my conversation, because that is one of the most important driver, of touching all the three pillars: people, process, and technologies. So I will definitely request Sai to add on the governance, on the regulatory and compliance side. If I talk about setting up these three pillars, in my view, the most important driver is the risk. What is at loss? you know if I am making a financial loss, I am any cyber crime, any fraud is leading to some sort of reputation loss, or if I am not protecting my secure systems well, I will lose my customers. These are some of the things which drive maturity of all these pillars. Now, if I follow a risk based approach, most importantly, which is driving the things at a ground level, are regulatory compliance requirements and the financial gain. So Sai, may I request you to talk about the regulatory and compliance part from the banking sector, and then I will add on the financial side to it.
Sure. Devesh, thank you for kind of looping me in on this. But just before we kind of get to the regulatory aspect, okay, I mean, I think there are a few other things that are also obviously contribute to it. So, for me, I would like to kind of start on a very different line. You will hear this in every organization, that customer risking, and every organization exists to attend to its clients' needs, and it is absolutely imperative to keep your focus on our clients and so on and so forth. Whilst most of us across this panel as well as in the audience would agree with this motherhood statement, it is also true that we know that there are certain boundaries within which we must operate. Regulations, cultural acceptance, prevailing market practice, reputation, shareholder value are all at stake when we try to juggle them and balance customer expectations. For me, as much as I would like to make this sound easy, I know that the aspect of implementing this balance is not easy, no matter how much of maturity that an organization can claim. Every organization that is serious about running their businesses sustainably have started making significant investments in their preventive infrastructure. By doing so, they are able to adopt to a risk based approach to meeting client demands without upsetting the regulators or exposing themselves to external threats. um, Specific to your question, Devesh, I would like to take a slightly convoluted view on this question, and this has to do with what I've inferred over the years in this field. To start with, let's take a moment to appreciate that the speed of change over the last 10, 15, 20 years is unprecedented, and there is no one sector that can claim absolute immunity. If we agree on this, the next point is that in most of the cases with these changes, humankind has only been able to effectively adopt to the change and play catch up with the aspect of mitigating the adverse effects of those changes. I'm not trying to find fault with this, but simply highlighting the natural course of things. Now that we are definitely on the same page, let me talk about how effectively the reactive machinery has worked. We call it regulation, we can call it by any other name. And let's take a view on how it has worked in different parts of the world. One of the primary elements of cyber fraud is access to individuals' personal and financial information. There is great consensus across all markets on this, and hence a set of regulations to ensure data privacy, like the GDPR, has helped almost all organizations to invest in securing their client data. What is especially interesting in this is the dynamism that comes with these regulations, implying that there is no time or no point in time that you could say that you're done with complying with it. Given the popularity, we will also see a lot of nations adapt various versions of the data protection regulations in its very form, or come up with their versions which are foundationally based on the GDPR regulations. Likewise, almost all regulators are now interested in the way organizations secure their data servers and the capabilities they have in place to deal with cyber threats. I mean, no disrespect, but even markets that were deemed backward in implementing, adopting latest technologies have reasonable focus on this topic. Lastly, we cannot look away from the fact that that people are the weakest link in the detection and prevention of cyber frauds. The challenge is to create as much awareness as possible to enable and empower them from becoming gullible victims. Enough has been spoken about awareness, so I will probably kind of restrict my thoughts on that at this point in time. Devesh, does this give you the flavor that you were looking for?
Definitely, Sai.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this. Thank you so much for this. So just to build
Yeah.
on this, so with these things and the risk based approach that Sai also emphasized, what happens if I look for a technological implementation, the most important challenge in cyber industry is the right skill set to manage those technologies. So as the ecosystem is maturing towards building strong defense, along with technology, a right skill set also has to be built. And that's where one of the issue is that you have the world class system, but the people who are behind that, who are looking at that, who are managing it, they don't even know how to handle those situations.
That's
And
true. Yeah.
that's where the strong governance and building strong processes who can work as an amalgam along with technology as well as people layer can build the entire system more securely. That's my view to close this point.
Great, Devesh. Thank you so much for the input. Really, I have seen one small, risk management session, like in terms of accepting the risk, assessing the risk, as well as you transfer the risk to the SOI. It was a great flow, where I have observed. It is amazing input. And the very great output I have taken is, the right skill at right place is very important. If you see the recent fraud, most of the places the people are handling on the cloud security, but things are not taken care. They are cloud security, but there are n number of misconfigurations which leads to a lot of breach and then exploits. So great, the input in terms of right people at right time, which make the huge impact on the the cyber fraud side. Real, just now I come to Edel. Really, I wanted to hear because on the banking you have a huge experience. And really, just I wanted to hear, which are the sectors or the applications you feel, identity and then authentication is playing very significant role. It's maybe the financial side, or it may be other sectors where this two major pillar is playing a significant role. It's like it's a catwalk for you. I mean, day to day you might be handling. If you throw a bit examples that help us to understand better to enforce the right controls.
Which finger is your most favorite finger? Or do you have kids? Which of your child is your favorite child? Or do you have brothers? Which one is your favorite brother? Maybe with your brother, sister. So this is a really tricky question. And like, what should I mean, of course, core banking will be the most important thing. But it's like, look, just think about a banking premises. And we are going back 50 years. All right, we are going back 50 years. When I enter into the building, probably you had two important keys, which was the safe, for the safe. But today, most of the banks are in a environment that they're either in a flat network or they have connections with other countries, assuming, or connection with other cities if they're not a global bank, or they have segmentations, but the segmentation can be bypassed depending on which account you hack. So I believe multi-factor authentication should be implemented from A to Z. Yes, from A to Z. For each internet-facing applications, for any privilege IDs, for any, I repeat, any legitimate, for any software which is outdated. And I know this is easy to say. Like you hear people talking about zero trust. Oh, it's easy to say. Or you hear me myself speaking about zero trust or the cloud. But hold on, if you are in Saudi Arabia, the regulation does not allow you really to use the cloud that easily. Or if you in Europe, no problem, but we talked about GDPR, this and that, but it is really important to be able to identify how and where. And of course, it will come for the most critical applications. As I said, it's impossible to secure the organization end to end. Or of course, it is possible, don't get me wrong, but 100%. I'm not saying that. There's two types of organizations. One, they know they've been hacked. Two, they don't. So what does this mean? If we implement an issue breach mindset, if we make hackers or threat actors' job harder via implementing MFAs, via segmentation, via creating a green zone environment, maybe tiering our Active Directory. In Active Directory, for example, my enterprise and domain administrator accounts are the top accounts that definitely need authorization and authentication every time. My core banking applications needs it all the time. But what about the application where my customers fill survey? We saw this happening, right? I think it happened in NumPetya in 2017, 2018. I don't remember the exact time. What happened is, if you remember, Ukraine was wiped out by NumPetya. 60,000 computers, when I say Ukraine, 60,000 computers were wiped out within 1 hour. And do you know how? There was an application called Medicore or something like that, was hacked. And everybody who was using this application was, as a result, hacked as well. So if they had authorization, authentication on those, probably this would make the hacker's job harder. And if we had a proper control mechanism between, this would make the hacker's job harder. If we had a NIPS, you know, host-based host-based firewall or endpoint user firewall, you know, if we had a threat behavior analysis, if we had an XDR, then this would make the hacker's job harder. But again, back to your question, you wanted examples. That's why I gave the example, and I hope you're happy so far with those. Which vitamin is more important to get saved by Corona? Is it vitamin C, vitamin A, iron? You know, the same applies to things like what should I do, or what should our respective listeners do to get saved by Corona? You know, we say wear a mask, keep a distance, use hygiene stuff. Same thing applies to cybersecurity. Honestly, cybersecurity is not as hard as we mentioned. All what we have to do is patch. All what you have to do is implement the right control measures. All what they have to do is implement backup, you know, yes, not just backup, and test your backups. People are afraid of ransomware. Oh my God, I'm hacked. I have to pay $4 million to the threat actor. This is not enough. Then most probably the regulator is going to fine you another 4 million. You want an example? What happened to British Airlines last year? They had like a small incident. 1,000 of the customers out of millions were exposed. The fine was $250 million. How much did the government pay to ransomware company just last month? $4 million. Like, which one is better? To pay the hackers, or the, you know, which fine is better? 250 million versus 4 million? Of course, the best is to invest this money into your organization where possible and utilize it and not get hacked. For this, back to your question, we have to have the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So any application which has confidentiality, integrity, and availability risk should have AA, authorization and authentication. I hope this answers your question.
Absolutely. Awesome, Edel. Well said, right? We cannot really figure out on the human body, which is very important, right? It's a heart, lungs, or kidney. It's like all three is required to have a function, right? Otherwise, it's very difficult to do the survival. That's why it's a well articulated. It's very important stuff in terms of identity authentication, as well as very important. The major stuff is you focus on mission critical applications, which is exposed on the internet, right? That need a more controls, that need a more the enforcements to the end to end. That's add a lot of value that need really a lot of attentions to to take it forward. That's really the interesting factors. Of course, now we are well connected on the internet, and most of the application is connected to the API. So the internet focused applications and the API which need a more attention, which need a more control enforcements from end to end. Thank you, Edal. Thank you so much. Really, just I would like to hear a couple of input from Geeti as of the final the input. Just I wanted to know which sectors maybe you have come across where we have a more cyber fraud, or how the innovation is really challenging or the complementing the the security stuff. So love to hear the input from you to have the further conversation.
Yeah. So from if I talk about financial sector, where we are seeing lots of innovation through fintech, that's one space where I really want to add, and I'm sure other panelists will have other similar inputs. But fintech is an exciting space. All of us are building new application on our own or partnering with interesting third parties. So new banks, neobanks, virtual only banks are coming up. India has just got its first neobank recently, and open banking is another interesting development which is happening in the last quarter of this year. So that means while we are welcoming all these innovation as a great opportunity, here is our next opportunity also to build security by design within these new products. And that's where the challenge happens, because many times banks, they will not have the agility to develop these interesting product at the same speed that these tech companies are. And hence the partnership happens. When we have those partnerships, and what we notice is that there are a lot of entities who are as players offering different either end-to-end service or offering different parts of the service. So we engage with multiple third parties, and sometimes fourth parties and fifth parties are connected to our third party, and there is an entire API ecosystem which is being created. Now, the challenge here is that how do you really monitor this entire ecosystem? Because we have the contractual obligation and relationship primarily with our third party. And then they may not have their entire headcount in a fintech company may be much lesser than our cybersecurity team. So do they have the capability to adapt to the changing dynamics of cybersecurity is one question that banks really need to ask when they are tying up with selecting such third parties. And sometimes we may have to actually wait for some level of maturity before getting in, or maybe ask them to come up to the certain level of maturity, or the cybersecurity partnership is needed to ensure that the right maturity. Similarly, when it comes to these neobanks or these kind of new fintechs who are relying on a lot of APIs in the ecosystem, their supply chain is wide, and the attacks from the entire supply chain is very, very high. So that's where this kind of attacks come in. And malware can be proliferated across different vulnerable points. In fact, if a third party has got 10 fourth party or fifth party, it is very easy for the hacker to identify the weakest link in that and then attack. Indirectly, bank is exposed to that fourth party, fifth parties, and it is very, very difficult to monitor, even identify or anticipate that kind of attacks in future. And that's one emerging area for banks as well as the fintechs. And similarly, the regulation when it comes to the fintech space is not as rigorous as it is for the bank. It is evolving. So that evolution, regulators need to really factor and make sure that there is consistency of regulation between banks and fintechs in terms of cyber as well, which is one of the aspects, and general contingency or resilience risk as such. The other area where I would say technology is an opportunity is that this has made real-time monitoring using bots or other technology very, very easy. Similarly, in the authentication space, using AI or let's say other technologies like BioCatch or similar players, it is easy to authenticate based on behavioral analytics. And that's really driving digital lending or digital payments, or almost all the other business models are thriving on this automated, embedded, invisible form of threat monitoring as well as detection. And anomaly monitoring using the support of AI or machine learning is going to be the opportunity part. At the same time, AI is our threat also, because there are bots which are deployed only to track financial apps. So for example, there was this even bot or something I heard about, which is deployed only to monitor all the financial apps on the Play Store or other platforms that we have. So that means that every second we are getting exposed to these kind of bot technology. Another interesting innovation which is actually help destroying all our biometric plan is 3D printing. So 3D printers have successfully using 3D printer with a combination of other. It has actually proven that things like fingerprint scanning can be replicated easily. So and this has been proven in case of Apple Face ID. Similarly, Samsung had some ultra modern Face ID based on, sorry, not Face ID, but based on fingerprint based on authentication. Both have been proven as fallible based on 3D printing along with certain mask and other fingerprint replicated with this technology. So my take is that, to summarize, technology is a great opportunity. At the same time, technology is evolving and hackers are evolving this using the same technology that we are using for protection. Hence, accelerating our learning and upskilling our people with these new cybersecurity threats emerging from this new technology is very, very crucial.
Yeah, well said, Geeti. Like it's a 2 point, right? Technology is really complementing for both, right? Hackers as well as security professional. That's a really interesting fact, right? But it's a technology remain common. If you take AI, ML, it is common. If you want to take a bot, it's remain common. But how you are using it's very important. It is similarly like a knife. A knife have multiple purpose. How it's being used is it's very important. The same way, I think technology is really complementing, but how where it's being used and then how it's being deployed, it's play a very significant role. Thanks, Giti. Thank you so much for the input with great examples on the real time the ground stuff. Great. Really, with this, the people process technology as well as the innovations, really connecting cybersecurity, fraud preventions. Really, how consistently it is required. I mean, how it can prevent, this stuff. They wish love to hear input from you. How the consistency is very important, because if you see the most of the ground reality, the people will focus on audit. Like there is an ISO audit or PC audit or SaaS audit, they will look for maybe 3 months sampling, 6 months sampling, and then they will get things done actually. But if you take a security control, it's like a 365 by 24/7 kind of stuff, right? We cannot say because it's like a one-time activity. So how you think like this consistency is very important, and do you have any other live cases because of consistency, lack of consistency? There is a fraud and flaw which lead to a lot of exploits. What do you, Devish?
So Navneetan, as you rightly mentioned, consistency is the key. When I took that example of having a technology, to detect or prevent frauds, at the end, if you see all these technologies, they need some inputs, and the classical concept is garbage in, garbage out. If my records, my data, my input is not consistent, these technologies are not going to draw any intelligence out of it. They are not going to draw, how do we call it? Those patterns which can ultimately detect the incident. Now, when we talk about consistency, the other most important part is with the with the attack, with change in attack vectors, with the changes in attack surface, which Adel also mentioned some time back. The newer attack vectors are coming into existence. We need to constantly monitor all these paths. We need to constantly identify how my attack surface is getting more and more exposed, and those are some of the consistent effort which can prevent cyber crimes, be it online or offline. We need to get different feeds from our threat intel. We need to get feeds from market consistently, and that's when we can build a strong defense at all the layers. That's my view to it, Navneet.
Yeah, great. That's really as Edel also mentioned, threat intel us consistently due to the monitoring that prevent a lot of stuff actually. It should not be on time bounded. It should not be on season based, attack order actually. So with this example, really just I wanted to hear which countries really doing great on the cyber security as well as to prevent the cyber fraud, and then what kind of the key controls they have enforced across the country as well as across the organization. I think since Soy has the couple of global assignments, love to hear from the Soy uh, on this specific input.
Yep. Navneetan, I kind of briefly touched upon this when Devesh volleyed over his question on regulatory environment. So I'll kind of give you a little more flavor on it. See, the bottom line is that there isn't one market that we can look out and say that they're doing great and they will probably they've become immune to cybersecurity vulnerabilities and so on and so forth. It's a concerted effort, right? I mean, we've said it in different terminologies here, but if you look at the focus rather today, it's like the fact that we are in a ever changing environment, and the change is sometimes very difficult to catch up for organizations. There is customer demands on one side, there is regulatory pressure on the other side, and then obviously the vulnerabilities of not being able to sustain your business model on the other side. All this kind of comes together to cause a bit of a juggernaut, for want of a better word, when it comes to aspects of how can we do this better, right? So taking a cue from what we discussed earlier, it is rather the maturity of organizations in a particular geography or in a particular space sector that will actually define, because they become prevailing market practices or market best practices for organizations in the similar sector to emulate. So if you look at data protection laws, if you look at offshoring laws, outsourcing laws, and so on and so forth, these are all they were all invented consequent to the demand, or rather the problem that manifested itself in the form of cyber frauds, if I can broadly generalize it that way, right? And if you kind of take it to the next level, most organizations that are successful, or most nations that are successful, are nations that have an effective program in demystifying cybersecurity, right? And when I say demystifying, what I mean by that is that not everybody will understand cybersecurity or the aspects associated with it, like the CISO or an information security team or the cybersecurity team that exists within an organization. So there are people out there who will parrot out the statement that cybersecurity is everybody's responsibility, but they will not know the role that they play. So when it
Absolutely.
comes to connecting with different business lines, one of the things that we've adopted is to radically change the culture around it. So if you don't understand something, you will probably not be able to appreciate the risks associated with it. So take a step back. What is the metric, or what is the KPI that I would expect from my ground level staff today, from a particular business line or from a particular product line, that is an indicator of their cybersecurity vulnerabilities? If they get that right, and they'll be able to connect it better because they know their product best, they know their business lines best. If they can get that indicators right, for me or for my CISO, it becomes that much more easier to take preventive and corrective measures from time to time. A classic example is the way we adopted to eKYC norms, particularly in India, the way we adopted to mobile payment technology in India, in the wake of demonetization and so on and so forth, is that there was an immediate need, and consequently there was a regulatory scrutiny on how can you kind of make this safer for the common man. And then we had the right metrics to look at, we understood the right fraud trends, and we were able to pick up and kind of drive the right things. I cannot
Great,
stress
sir.
enough on the
Yeah, yeah.
aspect of awareness. We've spoken enough about it. I mean, you could have a half a day session and we will talk about it. Each one of them who are probably associated in this field will probably appreciate that, having an educated team, having a capable team, having an informed team is half the battle won.
Absolutely. No, it's well said, Soy. I mean, in terms of uh, the roles and responsibility at bottom level with a clear KRA, and then how it's being achieved if it's not aware. Apart from this respective responsibility, then we may not achieve this cybersecurity stuff. That's a really amazing input. Great, Sai. Edar, just I'm coming to you as a final questions for this session. I know that you are working on a lot of R&D and a lot of development and doing a lot of research on that. Really, just I would like to hear from you how you think, like in terms of future digital payments with our, the full cyber bulletproof, the mechanisms.
5 years ago, till 5 years ago, we had only that plastic credit card, right? And that was it. Of course, you could do bank transfer. Today, we are using our phones. Excuse me. Now you all got corona. Just joking. We got, can you see my phone? We got our phones. We got our watches. Is this all? Maybe soon we're going to use our fingers. I think it was on the news last week that in one country that a big merchandise started to use full biometrics biology. You just go and they put your fingerprint. It checks if your finger is connected to you. It checks if there is somehow someone behind you, stress management, and it authorizes. I think this is going to be the new future because banking changed so much. Remember, not far away, 10 years ago, we used to go to a branch to get a ticket. We had to, do everything from branch. Today, lots of banks started to close branches. They started to invest more and more in applications and digitalization. Please don't think this about we work for the bank, but we all also are customers of the bank. We want to make our job as fast as possible. The question to you, when did you went last time to a branch? I work for a bank. I don't remember going for a branch. I do everything online. Unless, I'm not that rich yet where I have lots of cash which I have to take it. This is not against, I think the new technology is going to be embedded more to us. From plastic card to phones will come maybe to our biometrics, which I believe will be good because, look, remember, again, 15 years ago, it was very hard to get a credit card. Today, it's very easy to get a credit card. Actually, as Standard Chartered, I can proudly say that we provide credit card within 10 minutes in many countries globally, and it's all online. I'm not here to advertise the organization that I work, and honestly, my involvement in that is not too much because it's happened outside my region. But what I'm trying to say is, we started to catch the technology. And look, when I used to work for Microsoft a few years ago, I met the CEO of Cyberbank, which is one of the biggest bank, and he told me a great thing. He said, we are a technology company with banking license. I repeat, technology company with banking license. Why? Look, I remember, honestly, before joining the bank, I had financial experience only as consultant, as advisor, as architect. And when they, even though I was reached out by a headhunter and I was offered the role, I went through interview process and they asked me, what do you know about banking? When I first joined, of course. I'm like transaction banking. I'm like, you transfer the money from A to B location? Of course not. The answer was nothing. I said, but what do you know about the protocols which is being used to transfer the money? What system do you use? Is it Linux? Is it Microsoft? Is it Apple? What vulnerabilities do you have? what kinds of talents do you have who's managing that? So what I'm trying to say is I was strong underneath, not above, not in the application layer. And now understanding the other six layer in OSI, now also the application layer, I think we are here as banks to give the fastest, the convenience, and more importantly, the most secure. I repeat,
Amazing.
the most secure information products. And I'm pretty sure the same applies to Giti, Divish, Shai. Again, don't forget, today I work for the bank. Maybe tomorrow I'm going to work somewhere else. I like my job. Don't get me wrong. But at the end, we are in the same game. And we're going to, it's like, if your neighbor buys a new car, probably you're gonna, if not a new car, if your neighbor paints the house, you're gonna paint it as well, because otherwise it's gonna look old, right? You have to look also shiny. I hope you get my answer. Thank you.
Yeah. No, it's a great, Edel. I mean, the day you started journey as what is banking. Now you are in the position to protect this entire bank, right? So that's a transformation. So you have gone through that, and then you are adding value to the society. It's a really amazing input. Really, just I would like to hear 30 seconds final closing notes from each leader. Maybe I'll start with Soy. Just 30 seconds. 2-3 takeaways, and from there, just we can take it towards a closer. Yes, I open to you.
Sure. I mean, I'll make it really quick, given that 30 seconds is not much time. Top three things would probably be for me to never assume that your data is safe online or offline. Be extremely secretive about your personal and financial information. Number two would be make authentication a serious exercise. Do not use easy passwords. Do not have common passwords. Do not set your browser settings to remember your passwords. Change your passwords as frequently as possible, and it can go on. Those advices can go on. And third one is actually to educate yourself about the latest trends in cyber fraud. If you know how they operate, you will probably also know how to react and protect yourself. You have the responsibility of making it difficult for cyber criminals. You may not be able to stop it, but at least make it difficult for them, so that it is less enticing for criminals to get into that space.
Amazing, sorry. Amazing input, actually. Yeah, Kiti, glad to hear your input. As a final note.
My takeaway would be, or takeaway or exhortation, I would say, is that cybersecurity is not a technical qualification. It is actually a life skill. So just like we will learn to drive and you get a proper driving license, I would say the moment anybody buy an equipment, it can be any sort of equipment, being mobile or any of the home equipment which are connected devices. I would say there should be some initial education before you start operating itself, so that are you really aware to operate this subject to the cybersecurity kind of control? Then you are secured, and not only you, your family and your community is secured. So that becomes a life skill and not something limited to the CISO's office or the limited set of cybersecurity individual. That's my key takeaway.
Great, Kiti. No, absolutely. You bang on the fundamental, which is really missing, and then where we need to work towards to enhance. That's great, actually. Over to you, Devish. We'd love to hear your final note.
Yeah, Navneet, simple three things. Security by design, keep it to your extreme left, shift left is the key to start building a strong defense. Then when you are putting your detective and preventive controls, rely on newer technologies, the technologies which are coming in Industrial Revolution 4.0, be it machine learning, AI, augmented reality, and those stuff. And third thing, make it a continuous process. Let the learnings, let the engineering work, be fed by the advancements, and whatever you learn on the fly, let your engine learn it back. That's the only thing I can say.
Amazing, great, Devish. And this continuous enforcement, which significant contributions on the cybersecurity. That's a really great input. Over to you, Edal. Love to hear your closing
30
remarks.
seconds. I better not start talking. Just joking. Cybersecurity. I agree with everything what Giti said, with David said, with Shai said. But one thing, Of course, the cybersecurity is not coming from us, from outside the world. It's part of our life. Look, I'm gonna extend 5 seconds. Who knows you the best now, Neat? Your wife, your mom, your best friend, or your phone? Who knows more about you? Most probably the phone, right?
Mobile, might be mobile.
Exactly. Who knows more about you? Technology, Google, Apple. So don't forget, the more we share, the more we give away. Be aware, take care, and think before you do. Honestly, the rest is easy. Cybersecurity is a soft skill, but in some roles, it's also a hardcore skill. It's a combined mix, and we are better together. Don't forget, we cannot finish this cyber war without uniting. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to see all of you in person, shake hands, hug maybe. I used to be not a big hugger, but I'm gonna be a big hugger after so long. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity, and I'm looking forward to see all of you again. I told
Amazing,
you, it's not too much for me.
Amazing, Adal. Thank you so much for everyone input in terms of people, process, technology, innovation, governance, and in some consistency, and then future trends, current trends in terms of sectors. It is really, we touched upon this entire 360-degree of the cyber fraud, as well as in terms of the banking, as well as overall BFS sectors. It is a really amazing discussion, the great insight and then input. Really, I enjoyed in terms of hearing all your input. I learned a lot, and got your all insights over there. Really, from the heart, I would like to thank Sai, Geeti, Erdal, as well as Davish, and the great coordinations and support from Saranan, Venkatesh, and Sweta from the organization standpoint. So thank you so much for all your time and effort. Really looking forward to further conversations in near futures, and wish you all the best. Have a wonderful day ahead. Thanks a lot. Thank you so much.
Likewise, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
For this
Thank you,
wonderful
Navneet.
moderation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.